Well, good evening. Glad that you're here. Welcome. I'm Roger Parrott. I'm president of the university, and glad that we can have this time to talk about finance of education and answer your questions about that topic, especially. We'll look at maybe some other things about Belhaven that might be of help to you. And you've had this link on Slido, and I've got a number of questions there. And you can submit questions there if you'd like, or you're welcome to use the chat here, and we'll just make sure we cover what you want to talk about tonight. I want to make sure that tonight is helpful and not confusing. And higher education financing can get very confusing. So if I cover something and you're not quite clear on it, please, put a note in the chat or send me a Slido note or whatever, and I'll go back and say it another way or look at it another way or help explain, because those of us who live in this world are pretty familiar with it, and we can quickly go over some things that might be complex. And so I want to make sure we get your questions answered. I want to start, though, first of all, tell you if you want to contact me, how to get in touch with me. And I'm going to put in the chat my contact information, and that is my email, which is always the fastest way to get a hold of me, and my office number, and giving you my cell number because this is a time when they're just not in the office as much, and so it might be helpful to you. So see if you need to get in touch with me, please feel free to do so. First question had to do with COVID, and I want to answer that, although tonight's topic is on finance, but I do want to answer that. The question was, how did we do this semester? And I got to tell you, we did great. We really did. We have been in person all academic year. The fall was pretty good until about November, and then it got rough. And we had quite a number of students contract COVID. And of course, the quarantines is what makes it so hard, because if somebody's been exposed to somebody, they had to be quarantined. And through the fall, we had some students having to do 14-day quarantines, some doing double quarantines. A few had to do 3 times to be quarantined. That was really tough. And so over Christmas, we put in a testing center. We built a facility. We hired a PhD in chemistry. We do all the testing ourselves, and we have taken our rate of infection, which was 15% in the fall, and we've dropped it to less than 0.5%. It's probably 0.25% at this point. We've had very few cases because we're testing everybody on campus every week. And so, and that includes students, faculty, staff, anybody who's on campus. And so our spring has been terrific. We've had very few students have to be in quarantine, and very few cases we couldn't catch early, and nobody gets seriously sick. So it's really been a good time. We are very conscious of COVID. Personally, I'm conscious of COVID because my daughter's a COVID long hauler, and she's been in bed for 16 months with COVID. So I know how serious COVID can be. We don't take any chances with anybody about COVID. And so as we get into next fall, we are planning for things to be normal. And we're planning for the expectation that the virus will be under control, that we can pretty much go back to normal. We may still have to wear masks or whatever. We'll probably continue testing in the fall, but we are not testing anyone who's vaccinated. So if someone's been vaccinated, 2 weeks after that vaccination, they can come off of the testing protocol, which has really helped because probably about half of the campus is vaccinated at this point. We will not require the vaccine. I want to be real clear about that. We will not require it, but we do strongly encourage it. And it does keep students and faculty and staff from having to be tested if they've been vaccinated. So we've done really well with COVID. I know some schools in California have not even opened at all this year. Have been entirely online. We've maybe had 5% of our classes this year online. The rest were all in person. And it was hard to not have groups together. It was hard. In the fall, we couldn't really play sports. We ran every sport this spring. So it's been an exciting spring semester. Graduation is a week from Saturday. And we're doing graduation at the Mississippi Coliseum. It seats 10,000, and we're having about 3,000 at each of the graduations. We'll have 3 graduation ceremonies that day, because we've got students back from last spring and December, and then of course graduates from this spring. So that's kind of where we are on COVID. Let's talk about affordability, because that is a huge question of college and of Belhaven. And so, first of all, I think it's important that you look at the big picture when you look at affordability. There's a tendency to look at the sticker price and say, well, this college is more expensive than that college. Of course, that doesn't hold at all, because colleges give scholarships toward a portion of that price in most cases. Not all schools do, but most schools do. So very few people pay the actual price that's printed any place in the catalog. So after you look at that picture of what the actual price is, you then have to look at it in a bigger perspective of not just what are you going to pay to get that education, but what's that education going to cost in the near future. Let me give you an example of that. A lot of people will tell me, well, I want my son or daughter to go to the state university because it's less expensive. Yes, it is less expensive on the tuition. Here's the challenge. To graduate from a state university in the United States, the average time it takes to graduate is 5.5 to 6 years, because students can't get the classes, and so they don't graduate on time. And so instead of finishing at 4 years like they do at Belhaven, they go 5.5 or 6 years at a state university. Now they're paying less in the initial cost. Our cost during that 4-year period would be about $35,000 or so more than what somebody would pay at a state university for tuition during that same period of time. We'll discount room and board. You got to live and you got to eat no matter where you are. So just tuition, maybe a $35,000 additional cost to come to Belhaven. Here's the challenge. If you're going to that state university, you're going to be there 5.5 to 6 years. So let's say it's a shorter 18 months. So you're going to spend an extra $15,000 in tuition to stay an extra 1.5 years. But that student also is going to graduate a 1.5 years later. So they're going to be a 1.5 years later into the job market. And let's say they got a job for $35,000 or so. So not an ultra high-end job, but a good starting salary. Well, they would earn $52,000 less than that person who went to the state university and graduated 18 months later. So although it's $35,000 more to come to Belhaven for 4 years, it's $67,000 more to go to the state university over that 5.5-year period. So you have to keep that in mind as you're thinking about cost. It's not just the immediate cost, it's also that cost beyond graduation in those first couple of years afterwards. And I know some of you asked about graduate school. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So I think that's a good place to start. Look at the big picture. And of course, there's a tendency in that to then say, well, yeah, I get a scholarship, so I'm not paying X, I'm paying Y instead. And you are. Some families make that decision. Well, I got a better scholarship at this school than I got at this school, so I'm going to go to this school. Well, that may or may not be the actual cost. The question is, what's the net cost? In other words, what's the tuition price minus the scholarship the school's going to give you? What's that cost compared to the other school? The tuition price minus the school scholarship and the price you'll pay. Now, don't count the federal money in that, because you're probably going to get the federal money at either place. So you need to look at that net tuition. What's the real cost after? It's like buying something on sale. After the sale price, what's the real cost? And so that helps you to measure the value of what you're getting. And schools have, a lot of them have really high sticker prices, but nobody even comes close to paying that. And the reason is that in higher education, there's an assumption that if it's more expensive, it's of higher value. That may or may not be true, but people assume that. So you might take a William and Mary, and probably has a tuition of $50,000, $60,000 a year. Well, nobody pays that, but they keep it high, and then they give a scholarship for a big portion of that because that assumes they raise their stature. And whether or not it does is for the consumer to decide. But that's how a lot of this happens. We try to be very upfront with you to say, here's our cost, here's how much we'll give you in scholarship, here's how much the federal government will give you or the state, and then here's how much you need to provide either through your own support or through outside scholarship. So that is a important piece to understand. I think I had a good question here on Slido. It says, we're wondering about the best way to take advantage of all the outside scholarships there are and any particular student who can apply for them. There are tons of outside scholarships that go unawarded every year because people don't apply for them. I got today an email from a mattress company in Las Vegas telling me they have a scholarship program of $1,500. And do we have any students who'd like to apply? I don't know how in the world they got our name. Now, maybe they're just trying to sell mattresses. I don't know either. But they do have $1,500 they're going to give to somebody, or maybe several somebodies. There are lots of those scholarships available. You can find books that list those scholarships. You can find websites that list those scholarships. Don't pay anybody to get them for you. You can find that work. People who will work at it and go after it. There are lots of scholarships. Look in your hometown, at your Rotary Club, at your Kiwanis Club, other kinds of things like that. There are lots of scholarships available. And some of this is just absolutely applying for what's easily available. I was so frustrated this spring. I had a student who had a $4,000 grant from the state of Mississippi. She never signed the forms, and so she didn't get the money. And then she's frustrated she couldn't get her bill paid. Well, if she'd signed the form, we could have had $4,000 from the state of Mississippi for her. So it's really important. And in a few minutes, Michael Hawkins is going to talk to you about the process, because it's really important to do these forms in time so that you get the scholarships. Like in the state of Mississippi, once they give it out, there's no more money. So those who get in first get the dollars. A lot of these scholarships are that way. So I really encourage you, look for those private scholarships, find ways to get them. And there are lots of them out there, and you just have to keep working at it, and you can find them. I had another question on Slido. If a major requires graduate school, what's the best way now to prepare for the debt or the cost of graduate school? Well, a couple of things that are really important. The first is Belhaven is very unique in that for this last year's class, and we're doing it again for the class that comes in this fall, if a student enrolls with us and it takes at least 60 hours toward graduation, so they could be a transfer student and come in a little later, but as long as if you come in as a freshman, I think most parents here have a freshman coming. If you come in as a freshman and you don't stop out, you stay and graduate, we will give you a free master's degree in any one of our online master's programs. Now, we've got about 20 master's degrees. And so that they range in price somewhere between $15,000 and $25,000 for that master's degree. So that's one way to do it, is that if you come to Belhaven, you're going to get a free master's degree. Now, that may not be the master's degree you want. My daughter graduated from Belhaven in theater. She wants to get an MFA in theater, but she did her master's degree in leadership with us. And it's been great for her because it sets her apart in her resume of experience and her learning, even though that's not her field. So even though your son or daughter may have a very specific field they want to go into, and we don't have that master's, there may be another master's that will augment or help their education. And the way we've set this up is they can do that anytime after they graduate. They can do it immediately after graduation. They can do it 5 years, 10 years, 20, they can do it 40 years later. We don't care. They can do it whenever they want. That offer is there. And the reason we're doing this is because these students coming in this last year and coming in this year are not having a normal experience. Your students, if you're looking to have a freshman coming, are not getting the normal college tour experience, doing all the kind of stuff we normally do. And this is a way to make that a little easier for them. So that's one way to pay for graduate school. Another way to pay for graduate school. I've had parents who say, well, I don't want to take any debt for undergraduate because I know I'm going to have to pay it in graduate school. And you might have to pay it in graduate school. But you know what? There are a lot of graduate programs that provide teaching assistance so students go for free to graduate schools. Let's say your student wants to major in English or history, and they need a graduate degree in order to go forward. That's great. They can apply to schools that offer those degrees. And if they'll pick the right schools and apply to enough of them, they can probably get a teaching assistantship that will pay for that master's degree. The reason they do that is, let's say, student graduated here in English last year and went to Ole Miss to get a master's degree in English. That student is teaching undergraduates in English at Ole Miss this year. Now, that's one big distinctive from Belhaven. We don't use teaching assistants. So if your son or daughter takes English from us, they're going to get it from a student who's been in the teaching field, somebody experienced. They're not going to get it from a teaching assistant. But for big universities, that's the only way they can afford to provide undergraduate education. So they give their graduate students free tuition in order to go to graduate school. So depending on the field, not all fields, but depending on the field, that's the way to do it. The third issue about graduate education is that you can borrow the full cost of graduate education. You don't have to supplement that. You can borrow up to $20,000 a year. Now, yeah, if you're going to go to Harvard or something, you probably can't do it for 20 a year. But if, a normal graduate program is not going to be more than $20,000 a year. So you can do that, and hopefully you're taking a graduate degree that's going to produce an income that you can pay that back. So that's another way to do it. And obviously you can go to a graduate school that's very affordable. My son did his master's in library science at the University of Alabama, and I think their graduate program was much less expensive than their undergraduate program. I was shocked. So shop around and don't assume that graduate school is going to break your bank. Had another question here. Well, let me hit on something else related to that while we're on it, and that's this whole area of debt. And I hear families say, "Well, I don't want to take any debt. I hear terrible things about debt and college debt and how horrible it is." Well, there are a number of things about that. First of all, the media plays up the college debt, and there's a reason college debt is high. A lot of that college debt is from for-profit schools. For-profit schools take advantage of people who do not have the ability to complete a college education. They get them into a degree. They know they're never going to finish. They run up a whole lot of debt. They can't pay the debt, and then they're stuck. That's where a lot of that debt comes from. Another place a lot of that debt comes from is high-end professional graduate programs. If you want to be a doctor, you can go borrow the money to go to school, because you're going to make a lot of money, and you can pay back $100,000 to go to medical school. And a lot of debt comes from there. I don't mean that students in a typical undergraduate program don't have debt. Ours do, and they do carry debt. There's good debt and there's bad debt. Good debt is debt for an appreciating asset. If you buy a car and you buy that car on time, so you're paying interest on it, the second you drive it off the lot, it depreciates in value. That's not the best debt to have. If you buy a house in a neighborhood that's a strong neighborhood and it's going to go up in value, as soon as you get that house, it's an appreciating value. That's good debt to have. Higher education is good debt. The value of that person goes up as they get that education. They will earn many, many times more. We've got all kinds of research that shows us, you're going to make $1 million, $1.5 million more because of your educational experience over a lifetime. So that is an appreciating value. So that's one thing to think about. The other thing to think about is that only borrow what you need. The problem with higher education debt is not the cost of tuition. The problem is that the government set it up that students are able to borrow much more than tuition. And so they're borrowing money to buy cars, to rent apartments, to do other kinds of things. And that's fine. I understand that they need that. But If you borrow all that, you eventually got to pay all that back. If you borrow only for the portion you need for tuition, it's a pretty manageable piece that can be paid back when you graduate. The other issue is a lot of student debt is not college debt, it's credit card debt. So they're not putting off things they might want, and they're running up tabs on credit cards, and then they blame student higher education debt for it. Not saying again that that's not a real thing, but you've got to get debt in perspective. It's an appreciating value. It needs to be only for the tuition you absolutely have to have, borrow as little as possible, and then add to that a good repayment plan. If you, and I wrote a paper on this, and you can get the paper, I'm sure we've given you the link or we sent it to you. But if you write, if you graduate, if student graduates and has a good solid plan, they can pay back the debt for their undergraduate degree in 5 years. That's very manageable to do. Yeah, you've got to put off some stuff, and you can't buy everything you want. And as you get raises, you got to put that toward your debt payments, but it's very manageable to do. And so I think that debt is an important issue, but it's not this scary thing that a lot of people assume it is just by hearing about it in the media. Another good question here. Jobs don't look too lucrative in the way of income after college, since her major will require grad school. So what's the best way to keep her debt low? Well, I've talked about some of that. It's interesting about the job market. I've been a college president for 33 years, and I don't think I've ever had a year where we all felt like, boy, this is a great time to be graduating because the job market's really good. I think every year it feels like this is a tough time to graduate because the job market's bad. What we want to do is help your, in this case, it was a daughter, help your daughter start thinking about career during her freshman year and get a career plan developed. If you get a career plan developed when you're a freshman, and we build this into the curriculum, or freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year, where they're building on a curriculum plan that works toward a career. If they're building on internships that help good references, if they're building on experiences that help get that first job, as we all know, the hardest job in the world to get your first job. After that, it gets easier. To help all those things, then we can do pretty well getting students placed. Even in the arts, and it's one I track pretty carefully because I worry about our students in the arts. Are they getting jobs? And every time we track it, we see, yes, they are getting jobs in the arts, just as they dreamed they would be. Now, they're not the most high paying jobs in the world. The arts are what the arts are. But, that's their passion. That's their dream. That's what they want to do. And that's great. And so our students are graduating and they're getting good jobs. But here's a tip I'll give to you to share with your students. And most students don't get this. The most important job reference they have are the faculty members they're going to have at Belhaven. And so they need to work hard in those classes, impress the faculty members, because those are the people who are going to write them job references, either for graduate school or for that first job. And, I see too often students who don't seem to get that and don't understand that the future of a job is by doing really well with us. But I think that, again, if you're going into a graduate program, I was a psych major. And if you're going in psych, yeah, you're pretty much going to have to go into a grad program. Again, look for those grad programs that provide assistantships. Now, that brings up an interesting point. Let's say you're going into psych, and schools don't have too many assistantships in psych because they don't offer that many undergraduate courses in psych that assistants can teach. Belhaven has something unique in that we provide an option for a double major, and this really helps prepare students for the job market. The job market's getting where they don't just want somebody with one skill. They like that broader education. And so what we do for our students, if you come as a freshman and you stay till you graduate, if you take a double major and that double major pushes you into the fifth year, you will go tuition free in your fifth year. And that's a great opportunity for somebody to get a double major. So let's say you're psychology And you could also do a double major in English, where you could get a graduate assistantship in English and take a psychology major. And there's all kinds of opportunities there. There's things to do to get creative in how you can package somebody coming out of school in order to be attractive to graduate schools that will help take the edge off of that education. So I encourage you to look at and be creative thinking about that. My daughter got a partial Angie Thomas scholarship. Will this decrease if she receives an outside private scholarship? Will her Belhaven grant decrease? Once we commit a Belhaven grant to you, it will not decrease. So if you bring outside scholarships to it, that's great. And we want you to do that. The more outside money you can bring is the less you have to pay. But we will not decrease your scholarship. Now, the only important distinction in that you need to understand is probably part of that scholarship was a residential hall scholarship. And that means you get a scholarship for living on campus. You get another scholarship toward your general tuition. If you move off campus after your junior year, you do lose that residential scholarship. But that's the only scholarship that would be decreased. We wouldn't decrease. We feel like if we make a commitment to you in a scholarship, that's a deal, and we got to hold to that deal. So we don't decrease that because of other scholarships. Now, depending on what you get, your federal aid might change or not change. You got to work with financial aid on all that kind of thing. And congratulations to your daughter getting a partial Angie Thomas scholarship. That is really important. We got a terrific writing program. I'm publishing a book with Moody Publishers in January, and I'd sent that article to my editor last night. I got a note just before I came on here, and she said, it's amazing what Belhaven's doing in producing great writers, and they're really interested in our writers. So, so that is maybe answers a part of that question about giving assurance. A couple other things I'll hit on, and Michael or Suzanne or Dr. Russell help me if there are questions in the chat I'm missing here, because I'm kind of focused on talking. I'm not reading all of it. But other things to watch out for are room and board costs. And, you got to live and you got to eat no matter where you are. So unless you're going to stay at home, there's going to be a cost. But some schools are very low in tuition and really high in room and board. The reason is they don't care which direction the money comes from, as long as they get the same amount of money at the end of the day. So you want to look at that. Another thing to look at is that some students say, well, I can live off campus less expensively, and so I'm going to do that. Well, can you really do that? We have a little sheet of tabulation to help students to figure that out. Because if you live on campus with us and you have all your meals provided, it's an X. There's a cost to that, obviously, of X, and that may seem expensive. So you're going to rent an apartment. Most students can't afford one on their own, which means they're going to have to get a roommate or two or three. And what if one roommate drops off? The other's got to pick up the cost while they're looking for another roommate. They're going to have to rent that for 12 months where you come to campus, and we're just going to rent it to you for the time you're here. You have to get a cable. You have to get internet to that. You got to get access to a washer and dryer, which is probably going to be more expensive than what we charge for on campus. We're going to have a parking place for you. We've got 24/7 security. We got the place surrounded by lights. All the activities are here. You don't have to go to the grocery store. You start adding up those costs. It's not necessarily less expensive to live off campus than it is to have the full campus experience of living on. So you want to look at that as well. For our students, we do require the first 2 years to live on because we think that's important to the educational process unless they're living at home. So unless they're living at home, they need to live on campus. And we think that's a great thing. I grew up, my dad was a college president, and I wanted to live on campus just even though I lived across the street, because it was totally different to be on campus than it was to be at home and commute. So I do recommend that. The other thing you want to look at is, fees. A lot of schools will keep their tuition really low, and then they have fees for everything. And those fees can really add up. So you want to look at that. I heard about a major flagship university the other day that makes so much money off the parking tickets they give to their students, that it's a major source of income to them. Those kinds of things are important. You need to look at all that kind of stuff. Another caution I give you is be careful of schools that have done what we call in higher education a tuition reset. Let's say their tuition was $50,000. And to keep the numbers easy, we'll say they have a big announcement, a big press conference, and they say, we're dropping our tuition from $50,000 a year to $25,000 a year. And everybody says, oh, that's great. Now that school's affordable. What they don't tell you is they dropped the scholarships $25,000 as well. The amount of money the school gets is the same. They just change the sticker price. And every school who's done a tuition reset has done it that way, except one that I know of that had a huge endowment that paid the difference. But so you want to be careful, again, to not get lured into some of those really what are gimmicks of higher ed pricing, to let people think they're less expensive than they really are, because the students wound up paying the same amount or in some places more. I had a question came earlier, and a good question, because I know you want a Christ-centered education for your students, and you want the kind of experience that we would have. That's part of why, and one thing we didn't talk about was community college, but that's part of why students come here instead of community college. You can go to community college and save money. There's no question. You can save a lot of money going to a community college, but you get a very different experience, a completely different experience. My kids were homeschooled, so when the time came for them to get ready to go to college at Belhaven, they'd never been to class. So we thought, we got to get them in a class. So we went to the local community college and we signed them up for a math class because we weren't very good at teaching math. And they started in a class of freshmen in math, and there were 25 students in the class. At the end of the semester, there were 4 students in that class, and 2 of them were mine. And there is an iron sharpens iron component to education. And so in a community college, if you go that route, make sure it is an accelerated program. It is a high level, honors level program, because otherwise a faculty member has to teach to the lowest common denominator in the class, or everybody drops out, which is the case of my kids' class. Everybody just dropped out. Other than that, your son or daughter not going to get the education you want. And then, there's a big risk. Did you know, you wouldn't know the statistic, but of Christian kids who are committed to the gospel, committed to Christ, committed to the church, 50% of those who go to a state university will lose their faith before they graduate. And you can look at that and say, well, my son or daughter is so solid, they're not going to have that problem. And I pray that they don't. But 50% do. And so there's a risk when you don't have, especially in those early years, that grounding of a Christ-centered education that is teaching the truth and living out Christian grace, where you got faculty who love those students, will knock themselves out to do anything to help them be successful. All that goes with that, that's worth some dollars to me. As a dad, I'm going to make that investment for my kids to make sure their future is solid. We can't guarantee anything, but I do know what they're going to get if they go to a community college route. And I know what they're going to get very differently if they come to Belhaven. So, that's one thing. But questions sometimes raised, and it was in this note that came to me, we love Belhaven, we love the Christian environment, and we're going to come if God provides the money. Well, in many ways, God is providing the money. Scholarships, federal grants, federal loans, those are God's providing the money. I don't think people who say that would say, well, I'm going to buy a house if God provides the money, or I'm going to provide, a car if God provides the money. I think we make good choices out of the options we have, and that's part of God's provision for us. And there is this wonderful provision, thankfully, in the United States, the only country in the world that allows access to federal and state money for Christian education. You can't get that anyplace else in the world. but our system does allow that. And that in many ways is God's provision for your son or daughter to come to Belhaven. So I'm going to stop there and see.
Dr. Barrett, there was one question. If you could clarify real quick, the free masters program after they complete, someone had a question that they couldn't believe that was true. Could you kind of expand on that just a little bit for Michael to take over?
Yeah, it really is true. And there's no catch. Here's the requirements. You have to come this fall, and you either have to come as a brand new freshman or a transfer student who needs at least 60 hours, which is 2 years. So, and you have to stay continuously enrolled until you graduate. So you can't come, transfer someplace else, graduate someplace else, and say, I want my free master's. No, you lost it. You can't come and say, well, I'm going to stop out a semester. I'm going to, travel Europe and I'll be back. If it's not under our program, no, you lost the master's. As long as you come and you stay continuously enrolled until you graduate fall and spring semester, we're going to give you a free master's at any one of our online master's degree. Now I think we've got only one degree that's not online, and that one's not eligible. It's an MFA in dance, which is a 3-year degree. It's highly competitive, and that really is a terminal degree. That's equivalent to a doctoral level degree in the arts. So that one is not eligible, but all our other masters in business, public administration, in sports administration, you look online. We'll put the link up here probably that you can look at all the master's degrees, but there's a good bunch of them. And, I really like that Masters of Leadership because it just teaches good principles of quality leadership that it can go to any discipline, and a great opportunity, but it really is free. Now, when we did this a year ago summer for the class coming in next fall, because with all the concern about COVID, we were afraid everybody get scared and not come. They all showed up and they were thrilled for the free masters, and it took the edge off of what was a tough year last fall to kind of come in. But I know where I was headed with it. But we want to continue it this year because your students are not having that full experience. But there really is no catch other than if you come and stay with us. I have a question here. If a student took spring off or graduated at Hines, but beginning this fall, are they qualified to go right through the master's? If you've been at Belhaven and went to Hines and came back, probably, but I don't know. We need to look at that carefully. But if you're coming as a transfer student, it needs to be at least 60 hours with us in order to graduate to get the free master's. And the double major is just for freshmen. That's not for transfer students. That's only for freshmen. Again, same requirement. Come in as long as they stay continuously enrolled and take a double major. If it pushes them into their 5th year, then you can go tuition free. I had a student this week I talked to doing nursing and English together, double major. And it's going to push her into her 5th year because there's so many requirements in nursing, and she's thrilled. She can go for free. So it really is I know where I was going earlier and I kind of lost my train of thought. Nobody else has copied this. We thought other schools would pick up on it, but I don't know why, but we're really thankful that we can do this for our students. It's a great benefit for them. And it's real money in your pocket because, again, otherwise you'd pay $15,000 to $25,000 for that master's. I think we're ready to turn this over to Michael, who's going to talk through a little bit of the process. Michael, talk about that. But one other thing, I love this master's thing so much. I want to emphasize they can take this whenever they want. Let's say they're going to graduate and they want to go on. They got into Harvard. Great. Good for you. And go do it. And we'd be proud of you. You could come back later and do the master's. And of course, they can do it from anywhere. They don't have to be here because it's all online. And so we don't care if they take it right after they graduate, 5, 10 years, 20, 30, 40 years later. That is available for them anytime in their lifetime to take that free master's degree. So it really is a pretty unique opportunity. A couple of great things there between the master's and the double major 5th year free. Again, nobody else is offering this. Talk about making college affordable. That's our commitment, and that's why we're trying to do this. So, Michael, let me turn it to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Parrott. I really appreciate you unpacking that. It truly is a foundational time for students launching forward into their careers. Something I'm definitely passionate about, and that's why I'm here talking to you all a little bit more about the process and what things look like specifically here at Belhaven. So I've got a little PowerPoint to kind of walk us through that. So let me get that started. All right. All right, so financial aid 101. And again, thank you, Dr. Pierre, for unpacking that. We will move forward with this pretty quickly. I always like to start with definitions, though. Financial aid, what is that? This is something that we could go on and on talking about all night, talking about this all night. And so with that said, if I could say one thing that I hope y'all take away from this, from what I'm saying, is we want to work with you on an individual level. We want to help you every step of the way, because this can be a very complex process. And although we in the admission office obviously work for the university, we want to come alongside of you and help every step of the way to make sure that you're getting all of the scholarships that your child, your son or daughter qualifies for. So please, open communication. At the end, I've definitely got my contact information as well, so y'all can reach me directly. So this is a full list. We want to approach every single category, scholarships, grants, state, federal, as Dr. Perry mentioned already. As far as scholarships go, we've got a lot of great scholarships. We got academic scholarship based on transcript test scores. We are also test optional if y'all would like to pursue that, and we can talk through that as far as what would be best for your child. But also the residence hall grants for living on campus, the Blazer Scholarship. We've got art scholarships for portfolio reviews. The Blazer Scholarship is actually one that we get to evaluate a full holistic approach, because I think we can all agree that these students are so much more than just their academic ability. And so this is an area that we get to focus on their leadership, things they've been involved in, what they do with their free time. We want to get to know your child. We want to be able to advocate for your son or daughter for this scholarship. And if I had to wrap it up in one word, it would be character. In addition to that, we do have the visit scholarship for every family that visits. We'd love to have you on campus. We are open. We are giving tours. We had many today. We want to continue to do that and be available. If that is not an option for you, or you would prefer, we can also do a Zoom visit where we're able to talk through a lot of this, or even a phone call. Again, we want to be available in whatever suits your schedule. In addition to that, we've got multiple other scholarships. Another area that we're able to award in is based on financial need. That's not something that we decide. It's actually through the FAFSA, which is in the federal category. Once you fill that out, we'll be able to see, based on what the federal government says, what your financial need is. And we've got the Opportunity Grant, which is wonderful because we have many students who qualify for that here at Belhaven, even if they don't qualify for need-based grants, need-based grants through the federal government, through the FAFSA. For those on the call that are actually residents of Mississippi, I do want to encourage y'all to fill out the application for state aid. This is where things like MTAG are available, as well as MESG, HELP grant, which for this upcoming year, the deadline has passed for that. So we'd love to talk about your opportunities if you have applied for that and qualify for that, or what else you may qualify for on our end if we need to. As far as the federal aid, like I mentioned, that's all through the FAFSA. Filling that application out, it is a free application for federal student aid. And so it is a free application. Definitely don't want to fill that out if it's asking you to pay. So if you have any questions with that, we can help you as well. But it's through that process that we'll be able to see if you qualify for any additional grants like the Pell Grant, or if your son or daughter qualifies for federal work study, which is an opportunity to work here in a job on campus, which is a great opportunity and super flexible with their schedule, whether they're a student involved in many activities, clubs, or an athlete as well, and navigating all that. It is a great opportunity to continue to earn and invest in their own education. But also through that, there are federal loans available to invest in your son or daughter's education. For every freshman, they will qualify for $5,500 in the unsubsidized loan or the subsidized loan. And we can talk through that as far as the differences and the details and seeing what is best in that category. And I know Dr. Parent already mentioned, which is great, the whole category called outside scholarships, outside aid. And these are really scholarships, any scholarships that your son or daughter applies for that we can add on top of institution dollars. And so we do have a full list that we recommend, that we kind of give our stamp of approval of where to kind of look for those. One area is we encourage y'all to talk to your high school counselors, because a lot of times they might know of scholarships of previous students, and previous students have pursued and gotten those scholarships. And so that's a great place to start, as well as local businesses or even big time companies like Coca-Cola, Nike, Walmart, Amazon. These are all great opportunities. But some of the search engines that we recommend is also one called FastWeb, which is FASTWEB.com, as well as Sally Mae. There's also scholarships.com, scholarshipmonkey.com. And like I said, we have this full list on our website that we'll want to get to you. But through here, the whole idea is you build an account, and based on the information you provide, they actually start matching you up with scholarships that you can apply for. And not that the student's going to get every single one, but moving in this direction, what I always recommend is just even applying for one a week or one a month. It can really bring a great yield. So I encourage y'all to look into that. And that is something that your son or daughter could do every single year and pursue that for every academic year. The self-help category, this is where we would look at, like I mentioned, the federal work study, so student job, as well as the student loans that are available. In addition to that, other loans that we can help guide you all through if that is something you all desire or need to invest in the education. So we will, like I said, want to talk through all of that on an individual basis to make sure that's very clear, because I think this is a topic that can be very complicated, and we just want to make it as easy as possible. So with that, how do we do that here at Belhaven? How do we make this an option? 3 easy steps. So that we will just need an application for admission. We'll need to review for acceptance, which is the transcript test scores. So once we're able to get to that point, like I mentioned, you want to apply for the state aid if you're a Mississippi resident. And for any other outside scholarships, we also want to make sure you fill out the FAFSA. Through those steps, we'll be able to do a full evaluation for all the scholarships, making sure that your son or daughter is getting the most that they should. We want to ensure that and pursue every single category with y'all. And it's through that we'll then be able to discuss and see where everything lands and finalizing everything for you. So this is, I won't talk too much about this because this really is part of what Dr. Pear was talking about already. But we want to continue to give you all of those tips as far as what to look for as you're looking not only at Belhaven, but at other schools, what to be asking, what to be aware of, and making sure that we're getting down to the bottom line and comparing costs as a bottom line out-of-pocket cost for you. So like I said, we want to do that on an individual level. We want to make sure all questions are taken care of. We want to also get that full award package to you as soon as possible. So here's my contact information. Please take a screenshot of it, write it down real quick. If I can help in any way, please let me know. We've got an amazing admission team that's available and wants to help, but you can start with me right now. And I know there might be additional questions out there. We are trying to answer all of the questions that are coming up, and we will continue to follow up with y'all. as we can. And so we're taking note. If there's any that we missed, please let me know. Email me directly and I can address it and help out. My philosophy is if I don't know the answer, I know where to find it. So I really appreciate it. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Dr. Pear, once again for your time. And we will go ahead and close this seminar, and we hope to be talking to you soon. All right. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.